Hello, and welcome to another brand new Unsourced World Radio. We're coming back with a follow-up to me and Comrade Bullski's previous live stream from like 2 years ago, or whenever the hell the Eternals movie came out, with an overview, a roundtable discussion with my good friend AJ from Comics Code Authority. As we just dig into the Kieron Gillen Eternals run, the most annoyingly favorite comic of the most, distracting person on your comics Twitter from 2 years ago. Okay, because this run was everywhere, wasn't it? Like, it got a huge push. I had so many people on my timeline, comics mutuals, just comic influencers, just like, oh man, you gotta read this. This is a modern masterpiece. This is like a evergreen classic. This is something that's truly special in the making. And then now you have nothing. So just if you want to
Oh
introduce
yeah,
yourselves first, and then we can just get into like just the why of this first. So, Comrade, introduce yourself.
right. So I'm Andreas. I'm also known as Comrade Bullski on Twitter and all social media. I write about comics, both in a professional and in a fan manner, and I have annoying opinions about every obscure comic that you've never read. That's basically me.
And how about you, AJ?
Yeah, I'm AJ. Like Elvis said, I'm part of the Comics Code Authority along with Elvis and Ro. I believe he's been on this channel a couple times.
Mhm.
Yeah, here to talk about this Eternals run in AXE and everything that was so excellent about it.
Yeah, it is a modern masterpiece. It
Yeah,
is something that really sticks in your mind. It's really depthy and complex, intellectual.
but you weren't joking about this being very heavily promoted. I remember when this was still in production, and they revealed that we got Kieron Gillen's gonna write it, and I mean he was and he still is a fairly big name. And they also had Esad Ribic doing, or Ribic, I don't know how you pronounce his name. He had him doing like the designs for the characters, and Marvel would post the designs all over, and they were like, "Oh, get ready for like a new era of the Eternals and everything." It was very hyped up, and people talked a lot about it at the start.
Yeah. But I just want to say a shout out to Rollover Queen, who is at a bar but he's listening in and says, hey, give a little shout out to Comrade itself, saying hi, and we're glad that he's listening.
Yo,
So, before we started recording, Bolski, you said that there was a couple of things going on production wise, about like why this ended up the way it did to begin with, and I thought you might want to
yep.
go into that a little more.
So should we be going into like what the Eternals are now, or should we save that for when we
Oh,
discuss the actual run?
well, I feel like let's talk about the Eternals overall right now. 'Cause I think that's a
Mm.
better starting point. And the Eternals are a nothing. They're a nothing brand. I'm sorry. I'm actually I consider myself one of the Eternals' biggest fans. I've read all their comics as a team, all their actual Eternals branded comics, and I can tell you, as one of their biggest fans, self-proclaimed, there have been no good Eternals comics ever. They're all terrible. None of them are worth reading. You're wasting your time. But yeah, they go ahead. You add more context to that. You can.
Yeah, so Jack Kirby went over to DC in the 1970s, and then he came back because he was treated even worse at DC than he was at Marvel, which is depressing to think about. And he came back in 1974, I think, and they had him do a bunch of new properties. Like they didn't have him do much work on established characters, so they asked him to come up with a bunch of new stuff. And one of the comics he came up with was the Eternals. And the Eternals under Jack Kirby ran for I think 19 issues and one annual, so quite a long run, honestly. Like comparatively, most of his comics at the time lasted for like what 6 or 7 issues or something like that. Like Devil Dinosaur, I think got maybe not even 10 issues. And what I think, like they're sort of off-brand Fourth World, like they're
Yeah,
sort of off-brand New Gods. The premise is basically like it's based on the ancient astronauts thing, which Kirby was very fascinated about at the time. The idea that ancient aliens came down and created humanity and gave us civilization and all of that stuff. So he has the Celestials, who are this unknowable cosmic force. You can't understand them. They don't have understandable motives or anything. They come down and they create three branches of humanity. There's the Eternals, who are eternal, and they are the inspiration for all of our myths and legends. They are the gods of myths and legend. and then there's us, the regular people, and then there's the Deviants, who are like the ugly monster people, and that's basically it. And the comic itself is mostly about Ikaris, who is off-brand Orion. He's Orion without anything that made Orion interesting. Like, he's the most boring protagonist possible.
Oh, so boring.
And it ran for a surprising amount of issues.
Yeah, I
And
think it ran like 1 issue longer, or even equivalent issues if you take into account the. Well, actually, no. I think it ran for 2 issues longer than Miss Miracle. I think Miss Miracle only lasted like 18, and this lasted for like 20 overall.
Absolutely. It ran for longer than any of the Fourth World titles. I think the only DC comic that he did that lasted longer was Kamandi.
Oh man, Commander lasted so long, it's insane.
Yep. So the Eternals. So the point of so at this point I should probably say that the Eternals was not meant to be set in the Marvel universe, which is like a very important plot point, because in this comic, like the Eternals, there are no Norse gods in this setting. Like, there are no Greek gods. There's none of that shit. Like, the Eternals are the gods. Zuras is Zeus. Athena is Athena, etc., etc. And that's a very important part, like, because, these are the gods of myth and legend that have come back to the world. Like, there are no superheroes here. There are no Avengers or Fantastic Four or any of that stuff. The only thing that exists from the Marvel Universe in this run is S.H.I.E.L.D., which for some reason exists, because in the first issue they talk about Nick Fury. But like the other Marvel characters are fictional. Like, they build a robot based on the Hulk, and it's like, this is based on like the comic book character, the Hulk. Like, Hey,
to be fair, the Marvel Comics brand does exist in Marvel Comics, so that's it.
Absolutely. So the thing about the comic then is that later, when Kirby left, the other people at Marvel decided, this should totally go in the Marvel universe, and they put the storyline continued in other titles, where they actually resolved the entire Celestial plot, which is very strange. And then they just sort of... Yes. What Kirby said was that the Celestials were going to be on Earth and like judge the Earth for 100 years.
Yeah.
Like, Arishem was going to stand there for 100 years and just judge humanity.
Which is the coolest concept of all time.
Yes, exactly. That's so cool, because you don't like, why is he doing this? Why are they doing this? We have no idea, but it's really cool. Like the part with the thing you have on screen now with this celestial spaceship landing and the host arriving. That's so cool. That's such a cool page. And then they ported them over into the Marvel universe, and they were like, but we can't have this celestial guy just standing around. And then they drive him off, or you can't say they drive him off, but they resolve that plot. They leave again. And then it's just like, okay, so after Kirby left, they made the Celestials and the Eternals and the Deviants part of the Marvel Universe. Mm-hmm. And they made a second series in 1985, and then they had a miniseries where the writer was fired for incompetence, which is fantastic. How
could you tell? How could you tell, though?
I don't know. Walt Simonson did the last 2 issues of that, which is fun.
I mean more like, how could you tell who's a competent with the Eternals overall? Let's be honest.
I think the last 2 issues that Walt Simonson did are like near the top of Eternals comics issues, but they had intermittent revivals in the comics since then, but not like very prominently until 2006, maybe. Was it 2007?
I'm pretty sure it was 2007. We're at the Gaiman run at this point, right?
We're talking about the Gaiman run. It was just before the MCU happened, so they somehow roped Neil Gaiman in to do a couple of Marvel series, and one of them was the Eternals. He did it with John Romita Jr. on art.
His best work yet.
It's his best work yet. It is a very half-hearted sort of semi-reboot of the franchise.
Way you could reboot the Eternals. It is honestly the most generic way. It has everything that reboots of this kind just always fall back on. Like, what if they're like separated and what they need to, did they learn more about their identities? Let's give them amnesia, all this kind of stuff.
They are like they have been planted among humanity with amnesia, and they think that they're regular people. It's very similar to
Generic.
many of Gaiman's own stories. Like it's very similar to his novels about like the gods living in modern day Earth and all of that stuff. It's very much that again. And it's not very good. Like he kind of butchers some of the characters as well. He doesn't make them more interesting. It just makes them more like generic and boring. Like he writes a really bad Cersei, for example. And I think what's the point? Oh, it's Sprite is the villain of this, right? Sprite has blue balls because nobody's wanted to fuck him because he's like a child forever. I think that's the plot, right?
That is like that, and I'm shocked the movie keeps that. I am definitely shocked the movie keeps that.
Yeah. And that's the plot, and he's been using the Dreaming Celestial to just rewrite reality, and it's not a very good series, but it is very influential on the movie, and it is somewhat influential on the Gillen run. Like he definitely cribs from this.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, then not much happens again. Like there's another short-lived series, and then there's sort of side characters. And then they announced that there's going to be an Eternals movie. Ooh.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, finally, it's the big push. I feel like the only reason they announced Eternals is because the DCU was in the middle of exploding horrifically with regards to like Darkseid and Warfield stuff. And so I feel like the only reason this was like even pushed ahead was out of professional pettiness.
I think there's another reason as well. We know that Ike Perlmutter really wanted to make an Inhumans movie, and I think that this is sort of like the fallout of the fact that they forced him out and told him he couldn't make an Inhumans movie. I think if he had remained in power, this probably would have been the Inhumans. But they sort of scrambled to find a replacement that would sort of have the same energy, and they were like, what about the Eternals, like the other Marvel property that Kirby did about the secret people with superpowers. So it's very unmotivated, really. So naturally, if we're making a movie, then we probably should.
Anything about American Gods.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but I was gonna say, so we're making a movie, so that means that we should push these characters in the comics again, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, Elvis, do you want to say something about the movie? How the movie actually turned out when it came out?
I feel like the Eternals movie is like the only good Eternals branded product ever created. I think that again, I claim myself as one of the more devout Eternals fans. It is like as an offshoot Warfield thing, and a huge Warfield fan. And again, I'll repeat for any new listeners: I don't think any of the Eternals comics have ever been good. They're a bunch of ideas that might sound good, but execution-wise are insanely bad or tepid or confusing or meandering or just plain boring. And the Eternals movie, I feel like it is the least of those of its kind. Okay. I feel like it's like a decenter version of the Gaiman run. I think that even though it simplifies things a lot, most of those simplifications work in terms of making it at least an entertaining piece of fiction. Like how it moves at a clip. I feel like the characters are internally inside the film itself. Just they're fun. They have nice buoyancy. They have nice dynamics. They bounce off each other really well. I like all of that. The only thing I don't like in the movie is that the last 30 minutes is like the most bog standard cut and paste of generic MCU final battle ever done, which is insulting. And you're going to hear the word insulting a lot when we get into the Gillen run.
I mean, that ending thing you said about 30 minutes, that's also true of Shang-Chi. That movie is great until the last 30 minutes when it just becomes like a weird CGI energy laser fight for the ending.
And anyone who wants to know more, you can listen to our breakdown of the movie from 2 years ago. I went into it a lot in a lot of detail about that because I think the movie was almost good until they decided to just cheap out and cop out at the last 30 minutes. But overall, again, I feel like there's a lot of things here to like, and as like a general reinterpretation of gods living on Earth, it's not, it's at least it does more with it in its runtime, in its own fictional kind of setup than most other Eternals comics do.
It's a solid movie. Like, it's not anywhere near as bad as people have proclaimed it to be. People have said insane things like, "Oh, this is the worst MCU movie." It absolutely is not. Like, no way, no fucking way.
I feel like it's just that because this is my wishful thinking. It's because some of it's so good that when you notice more the tricks and deceit that Marvel movies do, a lot more as well. Because again, I feel like if this was like more of a bog standard MCU movie from start to finish, you probably wouldn't notice how terrible that last act is. But all of them have that same exact terrible last act. And I just want to comment to here, like, Stories and Videos Residency says that it would have been much better as a miniseries than a movie. I don't think so. I just think that the last 30 minutes needed to be. I feel like you only really needed like one. You only really need to change one thing about this, maybe 1.5 things about this movie, and it's a really solid piece of thing. It would be a lot more.
There's a lot of people who have said that it would have been better as a Disney Plus movie. I think that's probably the most common opinion I see about the movie.
Nothing was better about being Disney Plus.
Very, very, very common opinion that it should have been like have more episodes to flesh out the characters more, etc., etc. That whole thing. So the movie is it reinterprets the characters, so some of the characters pretty heavily, which is going to definitely be playing into the Gillen run, because the Gillen run came out after. But they did not have full access to what the movie was going to be when they made this comic. They did not have access to the full plot. They did not have access to who was going to be a villain, etc., which you can really tell because it's not nearly the same in the comic as in the movie. But what they did have was that they had some of the ideas of what the characters were going to be like. So, for example, they took some things directly from the movie, like Makari is also a mute in the comic.
Oh, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that right now because that is insane. I want AJ's opinion on this as well because you talked about Barbara Gore and all that. I hate how they do this. I really do. Okay, so like Ajak and Makari are like talking, and Ajak thinks in her mind like Makari could change. This is a choice Makari makes to be mute. And like they could have the machine fix them to their usual. To the way their bodies usually is, they must have another reason for this, and then it's never brought up again. It's like is it like kind of ridiculously insulting that like Makari is just choosing to be mute, even though that's not how they were, and it's a choice to be mute, and like
that's a difficult question to answer, but yeah, go ahead.
I want to hear AJ's thoughts on that.
Like everybody's gonna have different reasonings, right? Body disabled. Now I don't know too much about the character, but was she mute from the time that she was created, or was that something?
Oh no, God no! I think we need to. No, I think we need to. I think we need to explain very clearly here. So what happens at the start of this run is that they basically give several of the Eternals get like makeovers to be more like the movie versions.
Okay.
So the original Makari in the Kirby run is a blonde white guy. He's not a mute or anything. And he gets his new body in this run, and it's a black girl, and she is mute.
Right.
And Ajak is also a guy in the original run, and he becomes not Salma Hayek at the start of this. And that's a choice that they make, which is, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it.
I found it like just very much in bad taste. That's just my personal opinion. I feel like the way they brought it up and the way they just kind of brush it aside, it's like pretty much in bad taste. Because like again, if I feel like it would be a less so if they just kind of pretended that this was always how Makari was, but then it'd be like, oh, it's a choice. Like, why that choice? I mean, it's kind of like, yeah. Go ahead.
It's weird.
When with the case of disabilities, right? Like if it's something you had since birth. That's all you've ever known. Right, fine. The choice to keep living in that is fine. When you've experienced what life is like without that disability, you get a little murkier when the options of choice comes up. And I know, like, a lot of people tend to have issues in fictional storytelling where somebody choosing to go back, and I'm saying back with air quotes here, to the life that they knew before. Is going to come down to a choice for most disabled people. I've talked about it before with Elvis and Roe. I have scoliosis, not any, like, to the point where I should say where it's like outwardly apparent at all times that I have a disability, but it can impact me on a day-to-day at times. If you have the choice to reverse that for me, I'm taking it in a heartbeat. Like, it's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But that's my personal choice. That's not going to be the same for everybody. But yeah, how I remember it being handled in the movie, it wasn't. I don't know. It just didn't seem as super logical to me. I don't think most people would choose to go that route. But again, I could be wrong. There are folks who that feel like that might be erasing a part of their identity. So I'm not going to claim to speak for everyone, but for me, yeah, I'm making that choice in a heartbeat.
It's very strange to me that they're introducing this into the characters now after existing for 50 years. Like,
Right.
That's the really weird thing to me. If they had, I think, like what Elvis said, if they'd said, like, oh, this is what Makari was originally, and then they fixed that for a while, but that didn't feel right, so now they're going back to it. But that's not what they're saying. They're saying that they're making this choice now, that, oh, I'm choosing now to be mute, which is like, and like with the whole gender change and all of that stuff, and ethnicity change as well, which is like sort of, I don't know, it's a weird
It's
choice
loaded.
to make. It's very loaded, and I think only because nobody read this comic has nobody really commented on it, because, I mean, about the entire thing about Psylocke, right? That got
Yes.
so much internet traction. That was essentially the same thing with her, like, not being actually Asian.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is basically the same thing again, but nobody read this comic, so nobody's bothered to comment about it at all.
Right. I do want to bring attention to this new comment by Stories, Video Residency. I'm surprised you're breezing past Jason Aaron's retcon.
We're getting to that. We haven't gotten to the actual comic yet. Don't worry. We're getting there.
No problem. All right. Let's see here. But yeah, no, because you mentioned that right off the bat, it's best to just get into that, because that's one thing that my reread that I was just shocked by, because, like, it's such a terrible idea, especially for a synergy comic, because again, you're again, I don't like synergy at all anyway, but if you're gonna do it, I feel like, as we're gonna get into, this comic had like the worst ways of attempting synergy you ever could try.
Yep.
As you mentioned, it doesn't even though it's already changing what the Eternals characterizations really are in some ways kind of drastically, it's not changing them in a way that would appeal to anyone that actually liked the movie.
No. And I don't think, I think in general it has problems with making the characters likable in the comic, which is a huge problem. Like, if you never read the Eternals before, are you going to like these versions of them? Because they're not very pleasant people, most of them. And if you read them before, then they've been drastically changed. Are you going to like them, the new versions? I don't know. Like, it feels like you're between chairs, so to speak.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's get into the run itself, unless as we move ahead here.
Yeah.
And the first, again.
Oh yeah. So they wanted us to talk about the Jason Aaron retcon. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Which the first issue begins with, "Oh, you please read fucking Avengers 2018
Never.
1-6." What happens in that run is that they go to Olympia and they find that the Eternals are all dead. They've all committed suicide, like the classic versions of the Eternals, the ones from the Kirby comic. Because they found out, like, the secret of their existence which is like
one
the
of their
setup.
secrets.
One of the many secrets. Yes, and it's very much the part that they did when Thor became unworthy, like when Nick Fury whispered something to him and he suddenly became unworthy all of a sudden. Like it's that kind of plot twist like that they do again. And the Eternals are really not part of that run either. So that reference, if you go back and read those Avengers issues, you're gonna be very mad because you just read 6 issues of a comic that doesn't give you much.
Right, exactly. But what was actually the retcon again?
Oh shit.
I can't remember. I just read the
no,
first thing
I
on.
think
I can't remember.
no, I think it's the thing that they were created to like purge unclean genetic people, right? Like it's the thing that leads into XE eventually. That they're supposed to like eradicate branches of humanity that are flawed. I don't remember. Or maybe it is the thing with no, wait, no, it's not the thing with them killing people when they resurrect because they don't find that out until the actual run.
Exactly.
Or maybe they forget when they die, actually. I don't know.
Who gives a fuck?
It's one of
anyway.
those things. It's one of those things, anyway.
Yeah, there's too many secrets to keep track of. It's amazing how many secrets Gillen brings up in this tiny 12-issue run. It's actually mind-boggling. But let's get into the run. Okay, so the run begins with big applause. You know, you have Gillen, superstar writer. You have Sad Ribic, superstar artist.
Yep.
You know, fresh off of the classic Mighty Thor, or sorry, Thor. Whatever.
Right in the middle of Kieron Gillen establishing himself as like one of the big X-Men architects
Right, yeah.
of the Krakoa era. Like this is very much a book that sort of lived. They try to really incorporate this into the Krakoa storyline, sort of like leeching onto it. So yeah, absolutely.
Right, exactly. And so they have that, and so really you go into this, and it was heavily promoted as like this big, all-encompassing storyline. You read the first issue. I feel like the first issue is like the closest at like capturing that in that kind of intent, because you have like the big, expansive, delicate details that Ribish is capable of. You know, those the softness of his figures. It feels grand. It feels like you're feeling something grand. And then you have the narration of the machine, aka the intelligence of Earth, and it's like it's a little bit more vague, a little more mysterious. And then you have the very Hickman-y data pages, which I feel like, again, we'll get into this later, but they're way too much. I feel like it's like you're not Hickman, and these aren't interesting as Hickman data pages, and Hickman data pages are only interesting like 50% of the time anyway.
I mean, I'm forcing myself to read some of the Hickman pages just because I know that he puts like essential plot points in there, which people don't get because they don't read them because they're pretty boring.
Right, exactly. So
I should say, I forgot to say this earlier, but prior to this actually being announced, there was a pretty heavy rumor that Jonathan Hickman would be writing this series. Like that was pretty heavily discussed. And I think a lot of people thought that he would because it sort of sounded like something that he would write. So I think that Kieron Gillen is doing his best Hickman impression here. Like he's really trying to be the architect guy again.
Yeah, and then he drops he pretty much gives up the ghost in like an issue or two, because that's when we really start to see the cracks fall almost immediately. Because let's talk about just the second issue, and we see Thanos come into play, and like he's like one of the bigger air quotes focal points of this run. Even though I kind of don't understand what purpose he served at all at the end of this. Honestly, you could say like, oh, but Eros comes in because of them. Eros doesn't do anything either, so who gives a shit? And right, let's talk about tone, okay? Because this run has no story, so let's talk about the tone.
Yeah.
The tone of this comic is basically after the first issue and a half, it is every bog standard like baseline energy that Gillen reserves for his comics about 20-something club hopping, young adults, pretty much. Like it's pretty much it. Like the narration of the machine becomes a lot more quirky and a lot more sardonic, a lot more self-aware and ironic, and the characterizations of the Eternals themselves just become a lot more simplified, especially when we get to like Cersei. If you want to talk about Cersei, because
I'm gonna go off when we start about that, so we may want to save that a bit later.
All right, so and it just becomes like I started to realize, okay, so one of the things about this comic is that when it came out, I got so many people who were saying, this is amazing. This is like something you have to be reading. It is a comic that is going to stand the test of time. It's the best comic of the year. And I read it, and I'm like, oh, I see why they're saying that. Because look at this page I pulled up, like it's readable. And it's readable in a way that is lively. That's a kind, generous word to say. It's lively. Because most Eternals comics are not lively. They are very huffy, stodgy, dull comics. And the Gillen's Eternal run, it has, at the very least, an entertaining, upbeat, animated, enthusiastic kind of mood to it. But it gets that way by just dumbing everything down. Like all the concepts we're seeing here, they're dumbed down, and then kind of like you're kind of like fooled into thinking it's a lot more better than it is through a lot of flowery and sarcastic language. That's pretty much it.
Which becomes more prevalent and more annoying the further you get into the run, until you get these really quirky, sarcastic captions. I know you shared one of those on your timeline, and that's perhaps the worst one, I think.
It's like after another, it is painful.
It's unbearable. It's unbearable eventually. Like Gillen did a creator-owned comic called The Wicked and the Divine. And this comic takes a lot of its energy and its narration style and its characterization style from that. Like if you read those two comics, they could almost be like sister comics or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, no. Wicked and Divine, again, immortal beings that kind of trade in human existence and human lives. They're a bit more parasitic. And this takes a lot of beats from that. It takes a lot of like the energy and the tone from that. But one thing is about like, again, Wicked and Divine, it's about club hopping 20-somethings, Yep. It lends itself to that. I think Wicked and Divine is actually one of my favorite Gillen comics ever written. It is, I think it's my favorite comic, it's bar none. I think that's where it's like the full encapsulation of everything that's actually really good about his comic writing style and his ideas and his interests, fashion, music, pop culture. It kind of that's the kind of comic that really he's able to kind of tailor to his specific needs.
It's a hipster comic, like it's archetypal hipster comic.
Meanwhile, Eternals is meant to, and it tries to be loftier. Like it really does try to be lofty. Like so here's another example. Like it here's an example of one of his
god.
pages.
Oh please,
and
no.
So like this is what I mean. I think actually this is I think like this like this is actually a good example of what I mean about like it gussying itself up. Because on one end, this page is meaningless. Like, okay, you're like, oh, like let's just wow them with like a data page, and it's like, oh, look how much information we're getting, but it's just a page of made up names. That's it. Like there's nothing actually that complex or intelligent or clever about this page. It's just a page of made up names, but you feel like you're reading something that has a lot of weight and a lot of depth with
and it becomes considerably worse as well when you consider that the Deviants are only in 2 issues of this comic, and they are not very relevant even in those 2 issues. Like there are 2 issues with the Deviants in them, and they have this giant data page of them, and they're also not really written to be very interesting in those 2 issues. We're gonna get to that later, but yeah.
Oh, so you're talking about the horde, the space bugs. Oh, see, I thought, yeah. Again, I'm not gonna say I've read Gillen's entire Avengers run. I thought that they brought that up in this comic either way, and then I just kind of assumed that was common knowledge or whatever. So I I didn't think that was a twist. I think that when they bring it up in the Eternals run from Gillen, Gillen's Eternal run, they kind of assume that everyone knows about it. So I wouldn't really count it a twist within this
Oh,
review. But I
so
understand.
I should. Okay, so the Horde. They came from the 2008 Eternals run, I believe. That weird one that sort of tried to pick up at the Game Man, and they introduced them, and they are a cosmic force on the same tier as the Celestials, but they are like a consuming. They're the most boring generic consuming horde aliens you can possibly imagine. Like they're space parasites, and they consume cosmic entities, and they consume life forms and all of that stuff. They should not have ever been brought back, ever, and yet here we are.
Indeed. And another thing that Gillen brings up and never pays off. So let's move on. And again, let's not call it his fault then. Like he's only paying deference to it. So maybe he didn't really give a shit about it, and he just felt like he had to bring it up. But I still count it as another flaw in this run because
But
he didn't bring it up.
I don't think that's a good excuse though, because this run ignores and retcons a shitload of previous Eternals lore. Like there are so many things that they outright say, "Oh, no, this never happened." Like there are things that are just removed from canon entirely. So why did he choose the specific elements that he chose? Like there was a conscious decision here. So it's not explainable to me really why he chose it.
Exactly. So on one hand, I'm not going to give him too much about it, but he could have just not brought it up because he doesn't do anything with it, especially in the time frame where it would have made sense to do with it. And the stuff that he does though with it ends up being more like gibberish than anything else. Let's see here. Let's see what's next. This first half of the run, Thanos is going around killing Eternals, and there's a murder mystery, much like the original. Much like the movie, is a murder mystery. Yeah. And Icarus is trying to like protect this random kid he had a vision of, who had the world's most awkward gravestone. Let's see here.
Right, so the run starts off with Zuras dying, right? Like that's the big thing that it kicks off with. Or am I forgetting that? Is that the murder that they're trying to solve at the start?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Yeah, that is the murder. And then they find that like a lot of other Eternals are getting killed, like Druig's father's, kingdom. They all got murdered, and so they're trying. And it's a lot of waffling around. It really is. It's a lot of waffling around. A lot of flashbacks, I guess, to like get these characters more across to the readers. You have flashback for Athena, for her love. You have a flashback for Kingo and his indecisiveness. You had a flashback for Cersei and Athena. I'm sorry, Athena. It's again, it's much waffling around. And let's see here. I really don't know what to say. Like, it's just a standard like, oh, we gotta go around, to set pieces that Thanos was already at, and that's it. Like, it's not acting like more than that. Well, it is acting more than that. But what is the vibe here? Like, again, look at it. We're taking this from this perspective of someone who never read an Eternals comic, who watched the movie, right?
Yeah.
You watch the movie, you pick this up, and it is just a boring whodunit. It is a boring whodunit because there's not actually, and they're never get anywhere to actually solving the murder mystery. They're just kind of like going around noticing like post Thanos, chaos of scenes, and then that's it. Like, then we get flashbacks to them. Like, I don't see anything here that would actually make sense to anyone, Eternals fan or not, or that would get them interested or invested. In fact, like the only thing that really gives these, run, this first half at least, any sort of vibe, liveliness. Again, I used the word liveliness before. Is the machine captions? All right, because again, I feel like that's really gives this some energy. And I don't like the machine captions. I think they're terrible. They get worse. They really get annoying and pointless.
Oh boy, do they get worse by the time.
All right, but like you come after after issue and like, okay, I'm reading something, again, depthy and high grade, and now these commission captions are like, oh yeah, no, see, but it's accessible. It's accessible. Like neither is it lofty or high grade, and it's accessible, but it's only accessible. What are you actually accessing? What is it actually like a window into? That's why I don't get. And Story says, what no mention of Icarus taking on Thanos? Who hasn't taken on Thanos at this point? And again, it's like that's like issue 2 as well. So I don't really see, the stakes or the intrigue there.
Yeah.
But again, is there anything about the run? Because again, I feel like just talk about AXC this point because I know we're only talking like 3 issues here, and I am already bored out of my mind.
Yeah, I think it's weird. Like the entire thing with Thanos is like, okay, so Thanos wasn't created by Jack Kirby, right? He was created by Jim Starlin, and he was not connected to the Eternals in any way. It's a major retcon. But what Jim Starlin did was he also did this thing where, oh yeah, the Greek gods were actually like real people who existed. Like they weren't gods, but they were like super scientific people. And they went off to like Titan and lived there, and then eventually Thanos came out of that. And then they later said that, oh, but these people were like Eternals, like Thanos' people were Eternals from Earth, and they sort of merged him into the Eternals lore. So he is the most popular Eternal character by far, but he's very rarely connected to the Eternal mythology, so to speak. Like he's usually off on his own doing stuff. Like even in Starlin stuff, is usually. I don't think Starlin has ever written any of the Kirby Eternals like ever into a comic. So Thanos being here is sort of just because he's popular. I think. Like I can't think of any other reason why he's there to sort of make the comic more accessible or whatever. I don't know.
You know what? I will say. I think most or some of the Thanos stuff is like the most interesting kind of things. Because I do like, I'm not saying I prefer, but I do like attempts to consolidate disparate ideas like that. Okay. So I think that it's not appreciable. I think it's commendable that he tried. And I think that at the very least, some of the stuff is interesting. Like just I feel like there's a meta commentary going on with the character and how it's being used, about like how incongruent it is. Thanos is with the rest of the Eternals. I think that there is something to that, and I think that's kind of clever, in a way. And I didn't mind it. I think there's worse things about the run.
And he does his best to work in the Jason Aaron Thanos comic, the one with his origin, because when you get into Thanos' origin in this run, it is the version that Jason Aaron gave. So Jason Aaron and Gillen have definitely been talking when they did this. Like they're referencing each other a lot in this. So there's definitely an attempt to sort of integrate the lore. It's just a shame that, as you said, that the run itself is sort of bloodless and boring in general.
And again, I don't want to say like, it's a bad run if you enjoyed it. Again, my thing is that it's not an unentertaining run. I understand it's entertaining, but it is pretty empty. I'm saying like what I'm saying is at the heart of this, if disregarding that using the Eternals as characters, it is such a tepid and hollow murder mystery whodunit. Because at the end of the day, like as a big push, I think it's got a big push. You have like, and it has like all these lofty ideals. Like, who gives a crap that Fastos was doing this?
It's I think that okay. So I think the problem is that it's too mundane. Like for me, I
Yes,
thought it was
mundane.
way too
It is very
mundane.
mundane. It is very
Because
mundane.
I'm gonna talk about the Celestials now.
Right, let's hear
So in this version, Kieron Gillen, what he does with the Celestials is that he makes them like the most boring. Like he tries to explain them way too much. You're not supposed to know anything about the Celestials, and this is something that Marvel keeps doing. They keep trying to explain what the Celestials are, and they like give them voices and stuff. And like, no, that's not the point. Like they're supposed to be unknowable. They're supposed to be that Jack Kirby panel where they just emerge from the heavens and do things that you have no idea why they're doing it. And every time they try to explain the Celestials, they become less interesting. And in this one, they go really deep into the Celestials. Well, not deep, but they do try to explain them, and they give them like understandable motives, like the entire thing with the Horde and all of that stuff. And they are so they're not really part of the run. Like they don't physically appear ever, except for in AXE sort of. But they really do make the lore really uninteresting and like base bog standard video game lore basically. And that's such a shame because like the Celestial stuff in Kirby's run, those are always like the coolest pages when it's just the Celestials doing inscrutable shit that you don't understand why they're doing it. But I don't think Gillen could leave it alone. I think he felt he needed to explain things because he's a very explainy type of writer. He really likes his big. He's got that Hickman vibe where he wants to make these big systems and stuff, and he wants to explain how everything works and how it's connected and stuff like that. And I don't think that he could leave things mysterious and inscrutable, and that's a problem really for me with this run. It doesn't have that cosmic feel to it at all.
Yeah, no, it strips down almost everything in service of being a very poppy, very light team comic. And so I think that's the thing. It feels like it's at odds with itself because again, you're coming into a comic that has like I said Ribbit art, that's off like Thor God of Thunder, off like and like you're hearing them and seeing them, do twee generic quippy dialogue, and it's like, okay, I understand why this is a fun to read, but like this is this could be coming out of like the mouths of like any substandard like say X Factor type shit, like there's nothing about it that screams Eternals or should be Eternals again.
There's no attempt in this run to make it an epic story. Like there's no attempt.
It's not an epic story.
There's no attempt here to make this like when they announced this, I was like, they're going to like they have Esad Ribic on the art. They're going to go the Thor route with this. Like they're going to go the route that Jason Aaron did with Thor, that Matt Fraction did with Thor. They're gonna go bigger. They're gonna go cosmic stuff that's gonna be like gods clashing and giant monsters and all of that stuff.
Existential, theological. And like fucking Immortal Hulk did more. On that scale than this did.
Yeah, I think most comics have, and like every Thor comic really since basically since JMS has done much better with this. And I don't know why they didn't do that, because like that would have been, I think, the thing that would have made this run interesting, because in the original comic by Kirby, they're also faffing about so much. There is so much faffing about and not enough cool things happening. They have never really done an Eternals run like that, and they could have done that, and it probably could have been at least like a fun, maybe not a masterpiece, but it could have been a fun comic. Yeah. Instead of this very slow-paced. No, it's not really bloated. There's not enough happening in it to be bloated, but I think it's slow, and I think it's very bloodless. Like there's no passion in this comic whatsoever, and yeah, it's very mundane. It's very down to earth. Everything is down to earth. Every character is very down to earth. Yeah.
Down to earth in a very twee kind of way. So you have something to say, AJ?
To be honest, I don't remember much of the actual run. I won't say I don't remember much. I will say that nothing hit me in a way, at least until you get to AXC, to where
All
I
right.
felt
Oh
strongly
yeah.
about it. But that was because it hit me in a bad way with AXC because the event's just not good.
Okay.
Oh
So
God,
it's
God no.
yeah,
We're
I
gonna
have
get there
thoughts about that.
soon. We're gonna get there
Okay, sure,
soon.
no problem.
All right. So the next half of this run, and I'm gonna say next half because I was shocked. Again, as I mentioned, I had so many people on my timeline, to my mutuals, who are saying that this was a modern masterpiece in the making. Okay, and like I honestly thought until a couple months ago when you brought up Bullski,
Yes.
that I thought that this run was still going. Okay,
Yes.
because I thought like, okay, I haven't heard about it, but I'm pretty sure it's like on issue number 30 or 40 by now.
So
So in the middle,
basically
yeah,
what
go.
happened is that I talked to Elvis on Twitter about something else, and then just out of nowhere I was just like, man, I can't believe that Kieron Gillen only did 12 issues of Eternals. And you were like, oh, but isn't it still running? And I was like, no, it ended with AXC. That was like the finale. And you were like, what? And you
Because
didn't
like
believe me. You thought I was joking.
I thought you were joking because like they did not promote AXE as like the finale. So I like, oh, just like I just like a couple of issues of an event. And again, we'll get back to later because I thought it was only a couple of issues. And then I heard both heard about it and AJ heard about it the other day when I found out it wasn't just a couple of issues. Okay,
Nope.
it definitely wasn't. But yeah, I thought it was like because I could not believe that it could only be 12 issues because nothing happens in the first 6 issues. And then I gave up after a couple of issues of the second arc, of the second half, because nothing was happening still. So I'll just let it stack. I'll just let it stack. And so I generally thought like one day I'm gonna go back and read like all 50 issues of Eternals. Okay. That's not happening. So let's go back in the second half of this run. The Thanos arc, which is just Thanos consolidating power
Yep.
for 6 issues, and then immediately losing power in the last 10 pages. That's the arc. There's nothing happened. If nothing happened in the first half, nothing even more happens in the second half of this run.
Yep.
The only thing about the second half that I would say actually does happen is, and that's actually funny. It's actually made me laugh. Okay, are these two panels? It's like the only good joke in the entire run. Okay, when we see like Orpheus and Eurydice, you think it's Eurydice, but it's not. It's a joke that he just kind of went through the Orpheus and Eurydice issue. Myth, like just relatively recently. That's a good joke because they're all named after myths. So you think this guy is like went through the myth a long time ago. You just went through it now. It's funny. That's a funny joke. Good on Gillen.
So in the second half of this run, they actually have the only stories to actually feature the Deviants in this comic, like the supposed big bad guys of the mythos. And they go to Lemuria for a little while, and they meet Crow there, and he is very poorly written, to say the least. Those issues are actually the only ones where they feature a bunch of the characters from Kirby's run. Like Warlord Crow is pretty much the main bad guy of the original series, sort of. Like he's certainly the most recurring villain. And they also have Carcass and Ransack the Reject are in those 2 issues, but they don't get to live with the Eternals anymore because of question mark. I don't know. So they are very quickly covered. It's just 2 issues, and there's no epic battle or anything in those issues. So the main villains of the comic are not really a presence in the comic. Like Thanos has so much more issue time to him, and he doesn't do anything either. So I don't know. And at that point, I mean, we're almost at the AXE tie-in issues already because those are the last 2 issues of the run.
And nothing happens, but let's bring into like the only thing that happens in the entire second half of this run, which because you don't really need to care about Thanos. He doesn't do anything of importance, honestly. He's just there to fill up time. That's what Thanos is used for in the second half. In all honesty, he's just filler so that you can have some space between Droog taking power. Like he's just there. He's just there to fill a seat. Okay.
Why is Thanos even still there? Like at this point, it's just ridiculously unnecessary.
So the only thing about this one, on the second half, we get the second big secret of the Eternals that Gillen decides to drop, which is let's see, which is was it the third or second? What came first? Oh no, sorry, that was Aaron's. Sorry, I was thinking.
Maybe that was Aaron.
Yeah, that was Aaron. Okay, second big one, which is that the deviants, okay, are the actual experiment on Earth. Okay.
Yep.
And is that ever brought up again in any reasonable manner? No. But that's the only thing. That's the only thing we learned about the second half is that deviants are the big experiment on Earth. That's what the Eternals are actually there to protect, basically. And excess deviation is to protect deviants and all that sort of stuff. And that's it.
That's just set up for AXE as well.
Is it? Is it really? Because the deviants don't even fucking matter in AXE at all.
But the premise of AXE is that the Eternals figure out that the mutants are deviants and that they have become too powerful and that they need to be culled. They say Gillen says that the X gene is part of the deviant genome that the Eternals introduced into humanity, which is a retcon also, and also possibly not true. I mean, sounds like the kind of thing that people are going to want to go back on eventually. But it starts off with the Eternals assuming that the mutants are like deviants and that they have gone too far and that they need to be like culled at this point. So yeah, I think that's why he put this part into the ongoing actually.
Okay, so
we didn't talk about the soul stealing, by the way. You're like, we're gonna talk about the secrets, and then you're like, you don't talk about the soul stealing.
Okay, I forgot that even happened.
That was like the big thing.
Okay, so my favorite thing, right, is that it doesn't fucking matter. It really doesn't. Yeah. Okay, it acts like it matters, but only Icarus really has a subplot dedicated to it, and Icarus, as I mentioned before, is not an interesting fucking character. No. So who gives a shit what Icarus is doing? Like everyone else is more preoccupied with other stuff, and Icarus is the only one that cares, which makes him a little bit more likable, just slightly. But like, if that was actually the impetus of the entire run, then you have something there. You have big questions, big ideas. That's a big idea, existential ideas, like Arishem's judgment, existential ideas, big ideas like that. But no, we have issue after issue of Crow-Thena love triangle bullshit, or more Crow-Thena love triangle bullshit, or Thanos beating people up, or Droog looking at that to being up saying, I got like 3 different plans going. Or there's more and more silly machine narration. So at the end of the day, who cares that souls are being stolen by the Eternals? The comic doesn't even care. The comic doesn't even pretend that you should care.
It's such a half-hearted kind of thing that they just throw out there like, oh, this is a shocking retcon thing that's never going to be ever brought up again in any future comic because like it didn't even matter in this comic. So yeah, also he literally just copied all of those Droog pages from Droog, whatever his name is. That's just taken from Gaiman's run where Droog was like constantly the smarmy asshole who was like, oh, I have plans for everything. Yeah, I don't know. Are we going to move into AXE now? Hello?
Sorry, I got a call. What
Oh,
was the last question? Move on to something particular?
no, I said that the Druig thing is just copied from Gaiman's run because he also had pages of Druig just going, "Oh, I have plans for everything, ha ha ha."
Hmm.
Like, but Gillen just dragged that out for 12 issues instead.
Especially since, again, the plans themselves like are just the most bare bones. Like, oh, you thought it was one thing, but it's actually the other.
Yep.
And that's it. Like, that's not interesting. That's not grand scale. That's just that's like a child's playbook of that one character from Game of Thrones that everyone thinks they like.
It's also like you mentioned the Athena love triangle stuff. I don't even remember what the third character is called because he's so boring and he dies eventually in the comic.
Cholok.
Oh yeah.
But
Great.
then there's other Athena love triangle stuff with Cersei.
Yeah. But
So
the thing is though, like they retconned out in this run. I'm pretty sure that they've retconned out completely that Crow and Athena have kids together because I mean there's absolutely no mention of it, and I feel that that would alter that relationship in significant ways. And I feel that retconning out the fact that they have like adult kids is probably just so that Gillen can write them as like 20 somethings that are just bopping around being singles. I don't know. It
yeah,
just
no,
feels like
that's
such a
definitely it. Because like
that it's so stupid because like that was actually one of the things what that was interesting about the like the stuff after Kirby was that they revealed that but like they actually broke the law of their respective people to have kids together, and that's like sort of a human emotion type of thing that you can make something out of that, and they and Gillen just totally went, no, that never existed because it doesn't fit with my idea that they're like 20 somethings who are quirky and dating and have like tragic relationships. And he does that a lot. There's a lot of things that he just retcons out because it doesn't fit with his idea of what it should be, which is we still don't know what that idea is.
which like I wouldn't mind if again none of this is new to comics. You know, changing it to fit your idea, that's not new to comics, but like
No.
changing it so that it's like just the most bare bones, simplistic, like twee, like team comic.
I mean,
Again, this
if
could
you're
be just
gonna
Young Avengers again.
if you're gonna yeah, exactly, but if you're gonna change something, then you need to make it more interesting than the thing that you changed it from. That's the point about a retcon. If you're gonna make a retcon, then you make a better comic than the original comic. That's the only reason why you make a retcon. And in this case, it didn't make a better comic because this comic is, as we have established, it is pretty boring and nothing happens in it a lot, and it has totally the wrong tone for the characters, like entirely the wrong tone for the characters.
And let's move on like to this part. Okay, so we're at the end. Okay, everyone's pretty much given up on stopping Thanos, like physically or materially. So they decide to resurrect a god.
Yes,
the dead progenitor corpse that the Avengers are using as Avengers Tower.
Yeah, which came out of Aaron's run as well.
Which is a terrible idea. Why would you want to sleep in a corpse?
I hate the idea very fundamentally because in Kirby's run they say that even the other Celestials can't kill another Celestial. They try to kill the Dreaming Celestial, but they can't. So they just put him into a coma on Earth, or whatever. And in Aaron's run, he's like, "Oh no, they're totally killed. Like the Horde totally killed a Celestial, and its corpse has been like buried in the Arctic forever." And I hate that. Like I hate everything when they just try to bring the Celestials down and make them like understandable and like, oh, it's just a big guy in armor. Like, and now the Avengers live inside him. I think also that it's literally just because Jason Aaron thought that Nowhere from the Guardians of the Galaxy was cool. Because Nowhere is a celestial head, right? And he just said like, "Oh, why don't we have like a whole celestial on Earth that we can live in instead?" Like, okay, sure.
All right. Let's see here. Then let's see. That doesn't work out.
It doesn't work out, but it leads them to have an even better idea in Judgment Day later.
Right. All right,
Ah.
so fuck it. Let's just okay. Here's what happens. Again, they find out the deviants were always the important ones. They're the actual experiment. Thanos falls for like the oldest trick in the book, and is then dropped into a wormhole, never to be seen again.
Yes, I'm sure that they will never use Thanos again. Like, I'm sure they will let him rest and only use him again after 10 years when he's like had time to recover.
And that's pretty much it. We get like a flashback issue to Ajax. Ajax in here again. I probably mentioned Ajax, who is boring as hell.
So Ajax in the original comic is just this weird cultist Eternal who lives in South America and builds like landing platforms for the Celestials. And he talks to the Celestials. He's not like an authority figure or anything. He's like the speaker of the Celestials. Obviously, in the movie, Ajax is the leader of the Celestials because they were going to have Suras in the movie, but the writer thought that would be one Eternal too many, so they merged Ajax and Zuras into one character. And she's a fucking monster in the movie, to say the least. All right, Elvis.
Yes, of course. I think that it's insane that the movie lets Ajax off the hook so much in the movie. Because in the movie, Icarus is only along for the plan for like 0.0003% of his entire lifespan. Meanwhile, Ajax has had like the entirety of human existence about knowing about what's going to happen. And it's like, poor tragic Ajax, and
also she's been doing this before. Like, this isn't the first planet that she's genocided.
And it's kind of implied, it's kind of implied that she knows, that she remembers her memories. So she's been doing this for eternity. So what a horrible monster. And Icarus, she should have been the final villain. Poor Icarus.
But so in the comic, they bring Ajax in, and she is sort of like this religious figure for the Eternals. She's sort of like, once again, the one that's very in tune with the Celestials, is always talking about the plan and all of that stuff. And she sort of comes back towards the end of this run, which is going to become plot important very, very soon.
Okay. Nothing else happens.
That's issue 10. Like, the issue 10 is the last issue before the crossover starts.
Right.
So there are only really just 10 issues in this run, and the rest of it is crossover.
Yeah, the rest of it is like the last two issues are just pretty much just basic prelude. Drew gets onto the throne, and that's pretty much it. Like, Thanos falls for the illustrating book, and Drew gets on the throne, and that's where the run ends. The most unsatisfying Eternals run, potentially, as its own thing, because even the other Eternals runs told full, complete stories. Okay.
I would rather read any of the other Eternals runs again. Like, the 1985 run is terrible, but it's at least things happen in it. Like, they fight monsters and they go around. It's not like anywhere near a good comic, but at least like it tries to be more of a mythology comic. Like, it tries to be more of a Thor style comic. And it doesn't have this quippy, sarcastic attitude that just drives me insane with the narration eventually. Like, that fucking panel you posted on your timeline is just like, I can't believe that got printed. I seriously can't believe that got printed.
Let me see if I can find it, because it is a doozy. So, this I believe is from the tie-in, one of the tie-in comics. From the let's say XC. Fuck it. There's nothing else to talk about with the original run.
Yeah,
anymore.
We're gonna talk about the big finale now. We're gonna go into the end game.
And 1,000-page insanity, monstrous. Again, I'll repeat again. I thought this was only gonna be a couple issues. Okay, I'm like, okay, it's an Avengers Eternals crossover. What could be the harm? I look it up. I started reading the omnibus, and I realized that is like 1,000 fucking pages. And like, what kind of story can you tell that needs 1,000 pages? There was no story in the original run. You could have tied up the loose ends in a 40-page one-shot.
there's 6 issues of Judgment Day, I think. Then there are 2 issues of each of the crossover titles, like Avengers and X-Men. So there are a lot of issues of this. This event is long. Like for what it is impossibly long.
Okay, so I feel like I've been fresh in my mind. I have a lot to inside, but I'm gonna get to my piece first. But there's also like a prologue issue and an epilogue issue. But this is an event that insults you, that demeans you, that mocks you for even trying to read it, because it is an event that every other issue, and including in that, like we included a tiny issue and everything, that is like, this event should not exist. Okay,
Yep.
It's telling you that this event makes no sense, that this event has no story, that this event shouldn't be the event you're reading. Everything that goes on, it says that.
Okay, so we're gonna have to be honest here.
Yeah.
A lot of events are like this. Like this
Yes.
isn't unique to this event. And I think that the Krakoa era especially has provided us with some truly terrible events that they have just felt like they have forced in that should not have existed. Like fucking Trial of Magneto is gonna be like the albatross around my neck forever. And Swords of X was also not good.
Yeah, this came out at the time where Marvel was trying to give pretty much every title what I call the X-Men stimulus package. Krakoa was at its, I guess we can say, at its peak around
I
this
think
time.
so, yeah. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So every event had to tie into the X-Men in some way, shape, or form, unless you were a Venom event, because they somehow had to have their own self-contained stuff. But everybody else had an X-Men event. Right after AXE ends, what was it? Dark Web started like a week or two later. And that's what around the time I just noped out of the X-Men for like a year. So I'm behind on so much stuff, but it was a lot. And
we should explain to the listeners who didn't follow Dark Web is that's the comic where they brought Madeline Pryor into the Spider-Man setting.
Yeah.
For some reason.
No, they did it for one very specific reason, that was to turn Ben Reilly into a villain, which is like another fucking stupid decision that I don't know why it passed editorial. But yeah. But you're absolutely right. Like they were really, really trying. I said this to Elvis before we started. Like they were really trying to use the critical acclaim and the fan acclaim of Krakoa to sort of propel all of these other things into existence. And most of them shouldn't have existed in the first place because like they're not good or worthwhile on their own. And this one, very much so.
Yeah, it led to a lot of unnecessary bloat. That can kind of be the obituary of the Krakoa era. That's happening right now. Unnecessary bloat, and it bleeds into a lot of their other titles. I guess you two are more knowledgeable on Eternals than me, so I'll let you all kick this off in depth. But
I think the first thing I want to say, which is I want to say something because of what you said right now. And that's the fact that the Avengers have no role in this event. They should not be here. This should be X-Men Eternals. Like the A of this event, totally pointless. There's no thematic reason for them to be here. They don't accomplish anything by being here. Like it's
what do you mean? We got Captain America giving an all-timer rousing speech.
Oh yes, of course we fucking did. But it's like
Man with the flag.
The entire thing, the only reason that the Avengers are in this event is because they wanted to have this be the sort of spiritual sequel to Avengers versus X-Men. Like the title is even AX again, like it's AVX, but this time it's AXE. And it's pointless. Like it should have been just the Eternals versus the X-Men. Like that's the only point, but I guess they didn't want to repeat Inhumans versus X-Men or something like that.
Oh man. Okay, so let's get into this. Okay, somehow this event has even less story than the Eternals run that came before it, because it changes its story every other issue. Okay, because first it's, oh my God, there's a war between the Eternals and the X-Men, and that lasts for like 2 issues. Honestly, the war ends after like the middle of issue 2. The war ends. Okay, the war does not last long. And then you're learning, well, then what are the other 960 pages about? Oh boy. What happens after that? All right,
Came in at a
is
good time.
Well, I mean, they decide that their previous plan to resurrect the Celestial was flawed, but that they can build a Celestial instead, which is a
Yes.
much better idea. And I hate it. It's so stupid. It's like offensively bad.
it's literally just the Age of Ultron movie plot again.
Yes.
They even say it again, like, oh, Tony Stark's brain must have caused it to go too sardonic and must have gone it to be too self-loathing, just like
such a
Ultron.
Gillen thing. That's such a Gillen thing to put in as well, because
Right.
like when he was writing Iron Man, he was really going deep into this MCU Iron Man characterization. Like, it was really, really quippy and sardonic and all of that stuff. So that feels very much like he's just referencing back, like, hey, remember my characterization for Iron Man? It's totally there. But yeah, so they build a Celestial. I hate it. It's so bad. Like,
and so that becomes plot number 2.
Yeah.
Okay, and so they get the Celestial body of the new Celestial working, and it says, oh, and then you have 24 hours. I'm going to judge you all, and if most people who are good people that I judge as good people are good, then humanity lives. If it's the other way around, destroying the planet, you know. And as I mentioned, that's what's called Judgment Day, I guess.
That's why it's called Judgment Day. It's 24 hours to Judgment Day.
And I think I'm foolish. I'm naive. I'm innocent. I think that he's going to leave something really interesting. Like, oh, he's going to judge everyone individually. It's going to be like really cool. We're going to get something like really intimate, really personal, that kind of thing. Something like I don't want to say too lofty, but like something like End of Evangelion, you know?
Yeah.
Appearing to all those people at once, and they kind of imply that's what's happening, but you don't get to see it. It'll be because the new Celestial has their own quippy narration, and then there are times when the machine and the Celestial they get like into arguments with their narration. And isn't that fun? Isn't that like funny? Isn't that like just so quirky? Just shoot me.
That's Gillen just trying way too fucking hard to be clever with this. Like, it just becomes obnoxious, honestly.
Yeah, and so that becomes plot number 2. Okay, and then plot number 3 is okay. Now everyone has to learn how to be judged, and we get a couple of like different asides, people sizing each other up. And I totally forgot to mention the dark side of this run that fucking Thanos is talking to in his page. Is his grandfather, granduncle, whatever the fuck, who is pretty much just a ripoff of Darkseid, and it's not very clever. It's not very interesting. And he is a very big, important part of like the first 2 issues of this crossover. And like, you know, once this new plot comes into play, why even care? Why even have to bring up a war? You could have had them decide to create a Celestial on their own without the pretext of war. You just brought up the idea of a war that had no purpose in story. You wasted an issue and a half. In fact, you wasted only an issue and a half. You wasted like the last 4 issues of the previous run on setting up this war that you don't need to set up. You don't need to set up. Like, and you have Drew even admit in like the first issue of this one, he says, oh man, you know, going to war with the X-Men is actually pretty pointless, but you know, people love a pointless war. It'll keep me in power forever. And like, how about not going to war? Not going to war could also keep you in power forever. If you're, you know, in fact, I'm not sure what Zurus did that kept it in power forever. It seems like Zurus mostly did nothing. So if you do nothing, you'll be in power forever. I thought Drew was going to be smart. So
his plans are so stupid. Like, they're.
I hate this event because it's so stupid.
Let that chopper fly. Keep going.
Again, it's an event that insults. Again, we're not again, like you mentioned. This is not unique to events. Like events, you know, they're just excuses to have characters interact. Most of the time, just bump up numbers, right?
Yep.
But this is actively insulting. It tells you. It tells you immediately. Drew even says it. There's no point for this war. So why did you waste 6 issues on this war?
Yep.
I'm dead. I'm dying. Anyway,
I forced Elvis to reread Judgment Day because I really didn't want to read it again myself. So I was like, you can do this, and you can do the cliff notes for me. And he did it because he's a fool.
You a good homie, dog. You a really good homie. You a really good friend.
There's so many times. There's so many times where I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna skip all the tie-ins, or like I'm so many times where I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna stop reading this. I'm gonna watch the movie again because the movie gives you more than this in terms of like actual themes. So the next thing that happens is again plot number 3, because I switched plots like 2 times now. Is they're all coming to terms of being judged, and you see characters get judged and not judged, and it's not interesting because like a lot of characters, they'll voice something like, wait a minute, that person who's a good person got judged negatively. Well, what does that mean? And then but like we know what that means. Where we hear the Celestial's narration, we know what they're thinking. So there's no tension. There's no like it's the Celestial's narration is pretty much just like, aha, I'm quirky. Just like that's like the Earth. So my judgments don't have to make sense. Aha, as long as they're fun and whatever.
It should also be mentioned at this point that the original Celestial Judgment that they in like the Kirby series, it is absolutely not implied that that's some kind of moral judgment. Like we don't know what that judgment is supposed to be about. This series makes the judgment very human and very like related to modern morals and stuff like that. But we have absolutely no idea what Kirby was going for, and he probably didn't know either. So this is very much like, once again, that dumbing down and making something very mundane and understandable kind of thing that the series just does all the time.
You know, and again, I actually got a little bit more like pissed off at this because like as I mentioned, I think that the whole Arishem, you know, doing the thumbs up, thumbs down thing is actually like one of the most enigmatic, interesting things that Kirby ever created. You know?
Absolutely.
Like it's so good. Like it's such a good, scary idea. It's like a terrifying idea. You know, like what could happen next? And so
it's fantastic. And you have like the other Celestials are just going around Earth doing weird shit that you don't know what they're up to. Like they're just wandering around or just standing somewhere, and you don't know what they're up to, but you very much know what this Celestial is up to because it tells you constantly.
Yeah, no, it tells you constantly. Like it's, I thought for a second, I really did. I thought for a second, like, oh man, this is gonna get good now. Like this is gonna like bring up petty ideas, and we keep saying that. Like we're just gonna bring up high existential philosophical ideas, but no. In fact, all we get are like, oh man, the Celestial didn't like that girl is just a Twitter activist. Who gives a shit that she's just a Twitter activist? I don't care. Like, oh no, like and then Gillen is really you know giving a hot take about Twitter activists. It's not like I don't hear about that shit on Twitter every single second. Like, oh my God. Or
why
that guy's a racist. That's bad. Bravo, Gillen. Racism is bad.
Oh my God, I think he's breaking. No, but like, why does a god care about these things? Like, it's so petty and meaningless, and I don't know what he's. Yeah, it's so surface. It's so mundane again, like trivial shit.
Can I interject here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, please.
I'm dying.
Please. So I remember reading this, and I think at some point, maybe in between the middle, it all just kind of I blanked out. But if I'm being honest about this whole entire event, I think it did more to service progressing whatever X-Men plot was happening than Avengers and Eternals. Because I don't know if anybody, I don't know, maybe you, Comrade, or Elvis mentioned, probably even AJ. I don't think Jason Aaron wrote any of these fucking issues for the Avengers tie-in. I don't think so.
He mostly wrote. I think I look at the credits. He mostly wrote the X-Men stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like I really think like they kind of bloated this up because I will say this. I think the concept is good. The concept of a god you doing the whole thumbs up and I think that's cool. I think that's awesome because let's be honest here. Nobody in the Marvel universe is perfect. There's a lot of people that's guilty for a lot of fucked up shit,
Oh,
and
yeah,
they deserve to be judged for it. Let's
like
keep let's,
like Jesus Christ, like the fucking population of Krakoa, like
yes,
go around there, like you're judging people for being like Twitter activists. Like,
yeah.
okay, let's take a look at some of the people that they invited over to live on Krakoa first.
Yeah, it's that's an interesting concept, but I honestly feel like this was the epitome of movie synergy, and we need to blow up the sales for X amount of titles, and that's what it was. Like, and I honestly feel like, is I said this before, like I don't know. I did a reread of Secret Invasion. I did a reread of like Civil War and all that stuff.
Mm.
I feel like after a point, Marvel just got to a point of, okay, we can't have our entire line be taken over by an initiative. So every single portion of the Marvel universe is going to get a turn at a crossover. And this was the X-Men, Eternals, and Avengers turn. But the problem is like there's good concepts with a lot of these, especially acts. I thought it hooked me for the first 2 issues, but then you realize this is not going to matter in a couple of years. Unless if it's for
now.
I'm gonna be brave and say that I don't think this mattered like even after it finished, because the new status quo that they establish at the end. Oh my god, I'm gonna spoiler this comic now. Please stop me. No, but the new thing that they do with the X-Men at the end of this, that they can resurrect humans, never comes into play again. Never, literally never.
Mm-hmm.
It's never a plot point. You think, oh, this is gonna change the entire thing with Krakoa, like this is going to be a big plot. Nope. Gillen barely even references it again. It doesn't lead to anything. This event doesn't lead to anything, even for the X-Men, who are like the poster children, who are like the ones who get like the big push in this event. Like it is an X-Men event that just has some other characters in it, and it doesn't even matter for them. Like, so why do we care? Like, why do the readers care?
Didn't Magneto die in this one too?
Yeah.
Yes,
I think this is one where he died permanently, quotes, end quote.
Yeah, it was in X-Men Red tie-in. When they Eternal, one of their factions, sick. Jesus, what was that guy's name?
Darkseid Jr. Let's call him Darkseid Jr.
Yeah, okay. Darkseid Jr. They sick him on Mars, and so yeah, Magneto was one of the casualties of that event. Casualty again in air quotes, because even as he's dead, he's still fighting. And then, as we know, he gets brought back a year and a half later with Resurrection of Magneto.
Yeah, I think 2023. I think right, like a year later.
Like I said, I'm behind on my X-Men stuff at the moment.
Yeah, no, but he definitely came back, and then he came back like now for the Fall of the House of X thing. And I made this joke. I made this joke on Twitter because, like in the latest issue, that was in Duggan's run, and they had like, oh yeah, okay, so Polaris is like now the best weapon that they have against Orcus, and she gets to be relevant for 1 page, and then Magneto shows up, and everybody's like, calm down, Polaris. They're like, calm down, Polaris was almost relevant for 5 seconds, but it's okay now. We have Magneto back. You can relax again. He's back. And she's like, "Oh, Dad, you're back!" And I'm like, "Yeah, good writing. Thank you, very good."
I mean, that sums up much of Duggan's run on the X-Men.
Oh,
he took over that book. Yeah.
But so, I will say this though, like I feel like I think there's been a lot of events in the past couple of years, but like I feel like this one had the potential if. This was, I don't know, I'll say, if this was like OG Marvel and it actually stuck through all the things, I feel like this would have been a good concept for maybe to stretch out a little more than however long they stretch it out to for this event. This was a good concept here. Yeah. I like the concept. It's just the execution is so, I don't want to call it bad. It's very boring. Basic. Yeah, it's a basic. Because then at the point you can just tell like, oh, we're just gonna go back to the status quo unless you're
Yeah.
the X-Men, which obviously you lost a big character, and then as we just said, big character comes back at the end. But it's like
But I
this is a
mean-
good concept. That's why
Right.
I tuned into this event because like, oh, hold on, timeout. Everybody's getting judged after all this fuck shit y'all done did. Okay, I'm in. Then after 2 days, it was like, oh, this is some bullshit. Never mind.
And the funny thing about the judgment thing as well is that we once again see that the X-Men are the preferred characters because the Celestial doesn't go to Krakoa. You don't see a lot of the Marvel, the mutant characters don't get judged. We're not going into that because Gillen is still writing X-Men, and he is still very invested in these characters. So the judgment is mostly happening towards like regular people, and you see that it's so skewed. Like it doesn't really affect the X-Men that much.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think like Jean's one of the few that gets judged, and
yes, they're always gonna bring.
She kind of has to when you look at Jean's history.
Yeah, it's that whole like you incinerate the planet once, and everybody's going to bring it up at like every party you go to. Everybody's gonna bring it up like all the time.
And like Cyclops, the Celestial. Did he even judge him? I think he just.
No,
stopped.
I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah,
a lot of these judgments,
Did
they'll
he
be
cheat
like
on
one.
Jean?
No, he cheated on Maddie when he was married to her. He ran off and went to live with Jean in New York instead. That was the reason that Maddie went evil in the first place, which is
Oh my god!
Look, Cyclops and telepaths. We don't talk about that. We
yes.
don't talk about it.
To be fair, a lot of these judgments still happen in like one sentence in a group.
Yeah.
So like that makes it so boring to read because it's not interesting. Like
he could never have Gillen could never have written it to like the Celestial come in and look at Mystique and go like, you've done some bad stuff in your life, because Gillen's obviously building Mystique. Like, you know what they're doing with her. She's like, she's the big lesbian icon right now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
She's basically getting a big carte blanche for everything she's ever done, and you can't critique her, so obviously you have to focus on other characters a lot.
My favorite thing is like you'll go to several characters and be like, I'll get back to you at the end, and they never get back to them at the end because the plot changes 2 more times since then, so the judgment stops mattering. And like
that's the problem I have though. That's the problem right there, right? Because we just mentioned it. They're focusing more on like characters who don't really matter. But I think that would be a good challenge to focus on those characters that do matter. Like, okay, why not focus on the X-Men characters that Gillen or Al Ewing still have to write? Because then, these stories would matter a little bit more. Then we'd have a little bit more of like, the fallback instead of just like 1 or 2 issues, which they typically do at the end. Then I think that's where it'd be interesting. But I feel like, I don't know, this is just my brain working. I feel like when it comes to these events nowadays, the stakes, they're purposely making it so that the stakes are not too high so that they can always revert back to the status quo. Because I remember at the end of this event specifically, the big critique was just like, you duped us. You made us think this was going to be something big, but all you did was revert back to the status quo, except if you're the X-Men.
Yeah.
Oh, that pissed me off so much because at the end of like, Journal was like, "Oh, I'm gonna turn back time." Like, what the fuck do you mean you're turn back time? 500 pages of my life and they're getting back.
The Celestial is like, I'm gonna fly backwards around the Earth and just reverse time again, like the fucking Superman movie. Like,
if you're not back in time, but I hate this. The only stuff I affected personally is gonna get reverted. That's bullshit. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're gonna turn back time, bring that woman's husband back to life. Okay, just do it.
But also, we're gonna turn back time, but Cersei's still gonna be dead because, like, we're gonna kill off the only Eternal that people actually care about and want to see and stuff.
So again, one thing I wanted to bring up, is let's see, a turn back time is Icarus is the only one of the entire fucking cast of the entire event that remembers what the plot of the Eternals run was. Because that's like, but like he's the only one who's like the Eternals are all the entire cast are like, oh man, we're like really knee deep into like this Avengers and X-Men crossover stuff, and like Icarus is like all in the back going, hey, remember we steal souls from people when we
Yeah.
die. Remember? Like, that's where this comes from. Because he's like, the only one I remember is like, you know what? I'm going to try to bargain the new celestial god that to only kill the Eternals and spare everyone else. Which I'm like, you know what? That's a stupid idea, but at least he remembers what the story is. Okay, like, oh, that's an interesting way to take this story. You know, if you're talking about for people with judgment, you know, it plays into like the whole guilt and you know, being aware of how you're, you know, affecting people, that kind of thing. And then the celestial says no, and then the plot of the Eternals run is immediately forgotten forever.
Yep.
It's never brought up ever again.
They
It might as well have never happened.
It feels like Gillen almost wanted it to be like, oh, if they want to bring the Eternals back again in the future, they can just ignore everything that happened in this run. Like, because it's sort of been retconned-ish, like soft retconned if you wanted to, which is not the best way to end your series, question mark. I don't know.
You know what? No, let's, because I don't know if any, you know what? No. Okay. I don't know if anybody said this, but okay, when this one first started, and I had a similar complaint a couple hours ago on the timeline, was it ever mentioned that it was going to be a mini or an ongoing?
No,
it was 100% an ongoing. They were
yeah,
really
it was marketed
selling
very heavily. You know,
they were marketing the shit out of this. They had Esad Ribic art all over the Marvel timelines everywhere. They were like, "Oh, this is the big new epic. Like, this is gonna be like the new Hoxpox. Basically, it's gonna spin off this ongoing title."
the Eternals universe, pretty much.
There is absolutely no indication this was gonna be a mini.
So I give Marvel a lot of shit, but I will give them credit here. These motherfuckers are slick. These motherfuckers are slick.
They tricked the world.
Yeah.
Yo, I had no idea that run ended until a couple months after when I was looking at
me
the
too.
solicits.
We're gonna tell this story again. Like Elvis, I'm talking to Elvis on Twitter, and he's like, I'm like, I can't believe they actually ended the Eternals run with like AXE with Judgment Day. That was so bad. And Elvis is like, what? But it's still going. Like, the Eternals is still going, right? And he thought I was joking. He thought I was fucking joking with him. No, it ended. That was it. It was 12 issues. It's over.
No, but it's so smart though, because listen, I don't think this run sold very well. But yo, what a great way to do it in a fucking crossover. What a great way to do it. So that by the time it's over, everybody forgot about the crossover because it's very forgettable. You don't even think about the Eternals.
Yep.
Oh shit. This is the one time I'm gonna give Marvel their credit. Because it's slick. They knew by maybe issue 10 or 12, hey bruh, people ain't reading this shit. End it here. And end it here. It's part of a crossover. They won't notice by if there's no issue 13. That's smart.
It is. It's very smart.
Good job.
And they also totally just leave the door open now that whenever they decide to do another Doomed Eternals relaunch, they can just ignore all of this. Like, they can just go in and introduce all of the characters again, because as if none of this ever happened. Because did it even happen? We don't know. Like, and we will never know because Gillen's never gonna come back to this ever.
No.
Anyway, we'll move on to plot number 3.
Oh my god, it's still going.
It's still going. Because, like, why is this plot still going? It was the war ended 3 issues ago. What are we even still doing here? The Celestial decides that Earth is judged bad. You know, destroy the Earth. And then it becomes about them trying to stop the Earth from being destroyed, but it kind of how does that make sense? I don't know. The Earth, you think the Celestial would destroy the Earth in 1 second, but it doesn't. And then so for 2 issues, we spend, and countless tiny issues, we spend the characters trying to save the Earth from being destroyed, trying to find ways to like life raft the Earth, you know, bringing human beings into the eternal cities, all that kind of shit. And then Tony gets an extra special message or vision from the evil Celestial, and he's like, "Wait a minute." He said, "I failed," and then now he's saying, "I passed." So, you know, we can all pass again. And that begins plot number 4, their attempts to pass again. Because they realized that the test itself was a test. And like what's why I started saying it. I think I even mentioned Bullski about this as well. Like they keep stretching out the plot by changing what the plot is. This does not need to be an event. Again, this could have been just one long single issue, a 40-page one shot. Okay, because you can tell like oh man, we don't have enough space. We have all these tie-ins still. Let's stretch this out. All these plot changes don't feel earned. They don't feel clever. They feel like you're padding the fuck out of this. You know.
So, to put this into perspective, the Infinity Gauntlet from 1990 is 6 issues. It's as long as this, the main series for this, just as many issues. But in that series, it sticks to one single plot line from the beginning to the end. There is one twist to it at one point, which is that Nebula temporarily steals the Infinity Gauntlet from Thanos, but that's like just one issue. And other than that, it's just about Thanos doing his plan. He does the snap. You know, he tries a bunch of things. He does the snap. The heroes try to rally against him. They fail. They get defeated. There's a bunch of philosophical discussion, but it's one plot line. Like that's 6 issues of just one plot line, and it's also intensely more packed than this series is. There's so much more things happening in that comic, and they're equivalently long comics. That blows my mind.
Anyway,
I don't know how they can change the plot 4 times in 6 issues. It's impossible.
That's what happens. I think they're framing them as twists, but they're not twists if you're just fundamentally changing what the fucking event's about. Okay, it's if you're just changing what the event's about, whatever. Anyway, they bring in Thanos' brother, Eros,
Star Fox,
Eros again. Commend trying to fit all these disjointed ideas together, and I do like his integration a little bit more. I think it's fine. It's like, okay, how do I become a living embodiment of an ideal? It's a good 2 issues. That's including whatever is in the tie-ins. You know, I think it's nice. It's fine. And then we forget about immediately Star Fox. Star Fox.
His name is Star Fox.
Star Fox,
the Nintendo game.
Like the Nintendo. I thought I was hearing that. Anyway, immediately forgotten. We don't need to care about him. He comes in. You think he's gonna be important? He's not important.
Well, he turns up in Rainbow Rowell's She-Hulk, and he is like infinitely more important in that series than he is in this one.
No way.
Yes, fucking way. He was actually a character in Dan Slott's She-Hulk series way back in the 2000s, so that's why it happens.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So the plot changes one more time, where they failed to retake the test. They didn't study, I guess. No, because why was that? Why did they change the plot again? If humanity wasn't able to repass the test, then why make the twist that the test was a test? You could have just kept it as the original thing where like they failed the test. Why have that extra wrinkle except to pad out another issue and a half?
He's not lying though.
Elvis, calm down, don't die.
No. Keep going, Elvis. Keep going, brother.
Keep going,
brother. Please.
Insulting.
It is
Marvel
insulting.
owes me money for having to read this. This is such a besmirchment of Jack Kirby. Okay, I have to say
to read this twice. By the way, you have read this series twice now, which is twice more times than anybody should read Judgment Day.
Okay, so if Judgment didn't exist and it was just the 12 issues of Eternals, I would have been like, you know what? Not a great teen comic, very light, very fluffy, and that would be the end of it. But I think Judgment Day is like the ultimate shit piece of cherry on a crap Sunday.
Wait, time out. Elvis, you didn't buy the omnibus, did you? Or you just
I did not. Wink. Okay. Wink.
In the reading order. Okay, good.
I asked him this as well when he started talking about this on Twitter.
Okay,
I was like, "Oh my god, did you buy this?" Like, I was like, "Oh my god, did you buy this omnibus? Like, did you pay money for this?" And he was like, "No, God, no."
No. I'm glad I read the omnibus because if I looked up a reading order, I would never have finished this fucking thing.
Yeah,
I would
that'd be
never have
tough.
finished it because the
yeah,
reading
because-
order.
Yeah.
The reading order probably has the useless one shots in it, and I probably would have bailed out after like the first one of those. But anyway, so they changed the plot again to like, oh wait a minute, we failed the test again, but that's because the celestial is confused. Okay, it really doesn't want to kill us; it's just confused. So we got to reason with it instead, and so that becomes the new plot. And they kill the celestial. Ajax becomes a god. History is turned back.
Well, it merges with Ajax essentially. Like the Ajax and the Celestial become one being, and Ajax becomes the new Celestial-ish. And this is something that popped up on my timeline the other day, which was very eerie because we had already planned the stream, and then somebody posted on Twitter like, I can't believe that they actually haven't used Celestial Ajax since this run. And I'm like, I can believe it. I can absolutely believe it.
It's shocking. Anyway, so I want to bring up the omnibus. I think I mentioned this again at the beginning of when we started. I'm going to mention it again because Rose here. The omnibus is the most insanely formatted omnibus I've ever seen. I don't know why you do this way. I mean, I think I understand why they did, but it makes no sense to me because of like what you have to do here. So it ends. The 6 core issues end with Ajax merging with the Celestial, and then it's like, okay, she is now the judge of all humankind. It's a giant ripoff of Final Crisis, basically. Most of this is a ripoff of Morrison's ideas for the New Gods. Gillen is a hack.
Oh no, we're really getting into it.
Oh shit! Oh,
the hot takes are coming. The hot takes are coming.
How is this not like Dax Novu? Not Dax Novu. What's the name? Nixu 010. How is this any different? How is this any different? Explain to me.
I will tell you, it's different because there is actually some thought behind Morrison's stuff, and this is the most bog standard version of it, like the most boring version. Well, yeah, right. Jesus Christ.
So, so after this is like the final page of like the first half of the omnibus. The omnibus is all 1,000 pages, right? This final page of the first half of the omnibus, and then after that begins like the tertiary tie-ins. And that lasts for like 400 pages. And then after that is the epilogue issue. And I'm like,
nope.
Who, if they read this in the omnibus format for the first time, would make it to the epilogue issue? Okay. I bet you, because there's people out there who buy omnibuses to read events for the first time. They wait for the omnibus and they read the event that way. I've seen it a lot. I know a lot of people do that. I wonder how many people never read the actual final issue to this story. It can't be. It's more than 0, and that's insane that they would format like an omnibus this way. I'm gonna say it. I would rather the omnibus be formatted strictly chronologically than to have half the core issues, half the useless issues, and at the end after the useless issues had the final issue.
Oh,
it is ridiculous. Anyway, so there's. I did not read any of the useless issues. I like skimmed through a couple of them. It was like stuff that we didn't need to see that you could have skipped over. And I'm like, well, I feel like you could have done, if you're going to do it that way, then you could have just not printed them at all. But it's omnibus, so whatever. A bunch of useless stuff. Like, oh, they had to fight here, they had to fight there. Anyway, the interesting part of this run was not the fights. Okay, so who gives a fuck? And we get the epilogue issue. It wraps up some of the plot threads of this run. Kind of, not really. It feels more like a prologue, like Bullski said the other day on our DMs. It feels like a prologue to the next half of issues of this run that never existed.
Yep.
Oh.
It's pretty much like, let's see. Just saying Ajax, God Ajax being like, we're creating a new church. We're going to be separated from the rest of the Eternal Society. We're our core main group again. We were living among humanity, it's basically the classic setup again. We spent all this time, all this page space to get to the classic setup again.
Damn.
Was it worth it? No. Fuck you.
And the big thing is that Ajax kills Cersei, and she's dead. Like,
Yeah,
dead.
Cersei.
She does not come back in this series. And she's the only good Eternal, which is like, she's the one character that people actually want to see outside of the Eternals. Not in the Eternals, because the Eternals as a team is, as Elvis has established, doomed. But like, yeah, I'm a big fan of Cersei, so this was really a bummer that she was the one character that they killed off. I mean, she's obviously going to come back at some point, but like, it's so stupid anyway. Goodness, fuck.
No, but like it's even like in the context of this comic, Cersei was not done any favors.
No,
Like,
absolutely not. She's written
like-
very poorly in this
Yeah,
comic.
and so you said you had like something to talk about that, so I want you to go. On.
Yeah, okay, so I was writing about this the other day, but like, the interesting thing about Cersei to me in the context of the Eternals, like, even in the original series, somebody said that Kirby's original Eternals is like, if every member of the entire cast is Thor, like everybody is this stoic, heroic character who just talks very ominously about everything. And then Cersei is like absolutely not that. She's totally the contrast to that. She's very human. She's very happy. She's very, like, she has fun, everything. She lives with people, humans, and not with the Eternals. So she really sticks out even in that first issue where she's introduced, which is why she's the character who's been used in other comics. Like, she's been in Avengers, she's been in Captain America, she's been in all sorts of stuff. And in this run, they absolutely do her no favors. I mean, Gaiman already did her no favors because it was like, oh yeah, she's totally like the horror of the Eternals, because like that's
Oh my god.
That's
I mean,
the characterization we want to go with. Thank you, Gaiman.
And Gillen just takes that and runs with it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wish I could find a page, because there's a page, and I felt like this is very much sexist, you piece of shit.
I think Gillen says at some point that she's basically fucked everybody,
She
like,
said
throughout
she said
history.
that, like, and then she's also like, when she sent as a honeypot to Namor, and the narration goes, you know,
Yep.
Cersei is no stranger to like, you know, seduction or fuck whatever the narration says.
Damn.
And
and then
so
also, yeah, and
it's
then
so bad, like, because
my
like
favorite
that's-
line. My favorite line is when he has a narration say, you know, well, Cersei has always been known as a good time girl. Like, are we going with the 60s sexism here? Really, Gillen?
we absolutely are. And
Damn.
it's so funny because like that's not at all what Kirby was going for. Like, what is this association that because she has fun and that she's like a socialite means that she's like basically just willing to sleep with anybody because somebody says that she should? I don't get how we got to this characterization. Like, I don't understand the I mean, Gillen did it because Gaiman did it, but why did Gaiman do it? I don't fucking know. Like, I expected more from him. So yeah, she's written very poorly in this comic, and then eventually just killed off because she is the only one of the Eternals who displays too much humanity or something to that effect. Like, they say that she is too un-eternally at several points in this comic.
Damn.
They're like, oh yeah, Cersei's too complicated because all of the other Eternals are basically like just going off their basic personalities. So I guess she was too complicated to be allowed to live, or something to that effect. I don't know.
Anyway,
Jesus Christ.
I'll let you finish. But
No,
I do want
I'm
to say,
I'm
good.
done.
I want to say that the final issue also, once again, returns us to Icarus being the only person in the entire cast who remembers what the fucking plot is. Okay.
Yep.
Again, he's like, he's still trying to make amends for the whole soul stealing thing. No one else cares. No one else gives a shit anymore. They never give a shit. They were like shocked, but Icarus is the only one that cares. Zeros didn't care. Makari didn't care. Sprite definitely didn't care. Cersei definitely didn't care. Thastos cared a little bit, then he was mind wiped, so he no longer cared anymore. Icarus is the only one that cares, and it's like, this was the big thing. I think, well, it was one of the big things out of like the 12 big things this run introduced. So why do they no longer care? Icarus is the only one that cares, and he goes off to live with the son of the parents of the kid he stole the soul from. And I would have forgiven everything if they had just called him Ike Harris again. Let's do it. I would
And
give me
it just sort of ends with the start of Gaiman's run again, where they're presumably all just living with amnesia among humans, and you're like, was this really necessary to go back to the status quo again? Like,
But it makes it easier to reset.
Yep, exactly. We're back. We can ignore all of it. Maybe we'll never get like another quippy machine caption again. I mean, God, I hope we don't.
Oh, my favorite part. Like they make a big deal. Like, oh, Fastos is sacrificing the machines, mindset, to stop Thanos, right? Or the Celestial, or whoever knows, whatever knows. And then like they're like, oh, hey, look, we did a winky emoji. Kill yourself, Gillen.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Elvis, what are you saying?
I'm gonna edit that out. Yeah. But no, it's awful. It's awful.
You know what? Gillen could have used this in fucking Follow the House of X. Like, there's a giant AI running the Earth. Like, oh no, the mutants versus AI, but we are refusing staunchly to make that plot interesting or give it any kind of interesting villain. So yeah. Also, I guess that Gillen probably thought that the machine was too interesting and too quirky to actually become a villain. I guess. I don't fucking know.
This is just, I don't know. I just don't. I just end up not caring. Like the comic punishes you for caring. The comic punishes you for giving a crap about the plot, what the characters are doing. They're like, you could say like, oh, but they're they're immortal beings above humanity. But the thing is, right? If you're gonna say that they're above humanity, then don't write them like 20-something-year-olds, for like easy drama.
The tonal inconsistency in this comic is insane. Like, you want this to be like a big cosmic story or something. Like, you want it to be some kind of epic, and the tone is just this very sedate, mundane story where people are like quippy and funny, and you have this silly little quirky narration all the time. It's just so, I don't know, it doesn't fit. None of it goes together at all.
It is like you're the most like just generic example of a Marvel team comic. That's it. Like people, but again, I mentioned that this is shocking because people kept bigging this comic up. They were like, "This is an epic. This is a true saga. This is a new Kirby saga." Like
an epic nap, maybe.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but like I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. Like, I don't know. Like, fucking John Byrne did better fucking stuff. At least John Byrne knew he was being an asshole sometimes when he did something terrible. He was being petty. Yeah. Like Gillen, I don't know if he believes his own hype, but he definitely didn't do anything to dissuade his own hype. Okay.
I think so this is just my take on Gillen, but I think that he is a writer who he can be very good, but he has a terrible, terrible tendency to just crawl up his own asshole and get way too obsessed with his own ideas. Like, oh, I'm so clever with this. I'm going to overwrite the shit out of this. Like, I read his fucking, I don't know, none of you are probably still in the X-Men thing, but like, I read his fucking ending arc to X-Men. There's one issue left. We're not there yet. And it's about the Phoenix, and oh my god, it's so fucking painful to read because it's so, like, he really thinks he's super clever about the Phoenix, like, about life and birth and rebirth, and he's doing all this thing with hope and Jean and all of that stuff, and it's just so self-indulgent, like, Jesus Christ. It really is like, oh, look at how clever I am with all this stuff, like, oh, there's a time loop and everything, and isn't this very smart? So I think he's very indulgent as a writer, really. That's his big flaw.
I'll go as far to say, from what I'm getting from this conversation, and from the little that I did read all of Acts. I don't think Garrett.
You read all of Acts, like all 10,000 pages?
Oh no, fuck no. Yeah. No, man, I'm smarter. Hey, listen, back if you had asked me back in the day, would I have done it? Yes, but no, I just read the main issues. I knew what type of bullshit Marvel was on. To me, this smells like Kieron Gillen was just told to come up with a pitch for Eternals, and he did it. That's what it. This doesn't seem like something he was very interested in. That's because this seems. I think Avengers was already ongoing, X-Men he was already ongoing, but I feel like it was like, guys, can somebody come up with a pitch for Eternals because we have a movie coming out, and I think Kieron Gillen was the only one who was like, oh, okay.
There was speculation before this title was announced. There was speculation that Jonathan Hickman would write it. And I said to Elvis, I said earlier that I think maybe that Kieron Gillen is trying his best Hickman impersonation here. He's really trying to be the big architect with the big ideas, and he doesn't have what it takes to do it. Like, he can't do it. He fails just because he does the fucking chart pages. He does all of that stuff, like the Hickman-isms in this title. And they're pointless as well.
Oh, that just proves my point then, because it seems like when Hickman left, there was a hole that was there to be filled, and Gillen was the only one that just raised his hand. Like, Elvis made a very funny joke a couple years ago on the podcast about, remember when all the writers left DC, and then Williamson was like the only one that could do like everything. Elvis made a very funny joke. It was like, guys, I'll do it. This seems like this is the exact same thing that happened here.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely agree. It does feel, again, we mentioned before, it feels like a hodgepodge of all these previous Gillen ideas, all these cliches he pulls out. Like, it feels like I think that if given the choice, who wouldn't want to work with Ribbich, but I don't think that Gillen, if given the choice, would have taken the same route. I think that a lot of the stuff that was in motion was already in motion before, like, maybe he got on. Like, we need a big push for Eternals. We got a big movie. We need superstar artists. I feel like it was a gilded cage almost. I don't want to give Gillen too much credit. I think that he still could have written a lot better than what he did. But it does feel like, if given the chance, maybe he would have taken a little bit more of a lighthearted like approach in terms of just what audience expectations would have been for Eternals. And I think that might have been like fine, that would have worked. But again, when you're sold like a big epic story and it's teen romance bullshit, no, get it out.
Yeah. And I think if Eternals did better, like so it made its money back, right? Like, can somebody give me like how much? Like,
no, yeah, it definitely made its money back. It wasn't a hit or anything, but like, it definitely made its money back at least.
It did like 400 something million. Give me a second.
Yeah,
400 million, but it was over budgeted, so it may actually not have made. Wait, no, it cost 236 million to make. Yeah, and 236. It cost 236.
Right.
So it sounds like it just broke even then.
Probably with the marketing, it probably just broke even.
Depending on what the marketing spend was, either broke even or I don't remember what their marketing was like at that time, because Marvel used to go all in, but that was during the pandemic. So if they cut back, it breaks even. If it's a normal marketing campaign, Marvel marketing campaign, they probably lose.
But it definitely made money. It wasn't a flop or anything.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I feel like if this was like a hit, I don't think this event, let alone that run, would have turned out the way it did. That's I don't think so at all, because I feel like based on like now we're having this conversation, it feels like by the time Acts was over, or by the time the 10th issue came around, they saw the numbers for the movie. They saw the reception for the comic book, and they said, guys, let's cut our losses. Because if I'm not mistaken, the Eternals have not been mentioned ever since Acts.
No, like the core team of the Eternals have not appeared. I checked this up just before we did this in case I missed something, because I was really terrified to find out that they've actually been in an arc of some comic and I missed it.
Damn.
Because that happens a lot with Marvel. I'm like, oh, that character hasn't been seen in like since that happened, and then it goes like, oh, but they were in She-Hulk like for like 5 issues, and I'm like, what the fuck? When did this happen? But no, the core characters have not been in anything since this happened. None of the core characters have been in anything. the only characters who have turned up, as I said earlier, was like Carcass and Ransack, who are ancillary characters at best, who are now supporting characters in She-Hulk, and Star Fox, who turns up everywhere because he's like not really tied to this franchise. Like he's part of the Thanos thing instead. So but like Icarus and all of those, nope, not a peep.
Damn.
And that's 2 years ago.
He's still living in that poor woman's apartment.
Yep. They're
It's a
still just wandering around waiting for the next reboot, like the next Game and Story, where they discover their memories for the 50th time.
It's a shame though, right? Because I say this as somebody that enjoys just the comic book game in general. Like, I don't mind movie synergy, but at the same time, I also hate it because it's just almost just like these comics are beholden to movies. Like, I don't think it's entirely fair that this Eternals run and this event was churned out because a movie was coming out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would have preferred this entire thing just be its own thing. And if it just so happened a movie was coming out by then, sure. But it's like, it leaves a very bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I know. I think of what you're saying, Ro, because at that point you're just adding more useless runs to a character or characters that don't need it. Like you're just kind of they're like good to like bad comic ratio, just going up for no reason. Like this comic didn't need to exist.
I would prefer as well. Like I think that if they bring the Eternals back, I think that they're probably gonna soft reboot and not pay any attention to any of this stuff in this run. Like,
I have the perfect excuse.
Yeah, I think it's the perfect excuse, and I think that's good because I think
have
a lot
the perfect
of
excuse.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the things as well that Gillen introduces into the Eternals mythos is also things that are like actively negative to actually use those characters again because they make them less appealing and less interesting.
I know
for
exactly
people.
how you would do it. I know exactly how you do it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Ajax uses her celestial powers, right, to bring Cersei back to life and to remove the soul stealing. But using them to fix this drains her completely, and it also wipes all their memories. So, but brings Cersei back to life, and they no longer need to steal souls. But it uses too much. She wastes all her power. Now she's back to being a regular Eternal as well.
No, she just uses it to like go back to the pre-Gillen status quo again. Like where they're not where they're not stealing souls to be reborn. I like the entire thing with the rebirth thing as well is also a retcon, but because like in Kirby's run they say that you basically can't kill an Eternal. That's the point why they're called Eternals. Like they don't die and are reborn in that run. They're just really, really hard to kill. They're like, oh, you need to actually like discorporate them majorly in order to kill them. So this entire thing that they're constantly reborn is also a retcon, which just came into being now in whenever this came out, 2021. That's it. Which is another unnecessary thing to add to the mythos, I think.
Mm-hmm. What a damn shame.
Anyway,
but yeah, so it's
any last thoughts because I have nothing else to say about this.
God, Jesus
Christ!
Christ!
The movie.
I was trying to figure out today. I was at my comic book store today. I told Elvis this already, but I was at my comic book store today. And I said I'm going to be on like a stream tonight and talk about the Eternals. And they had AXE Judgment Day on the wall, trade paperback wall. And I was like, and I'm going to talk about this comic. And I pointed at it. And my comic book guy seller, he made this face, like he made this ooh, you know that oof meme, the guy who goes oof. He sort of made that face. He was like ooh. And I was like, yep, I'm going to be talking about Judgment Day tonight. And then we basically, it turns out that he was one of the good ones because he also hated this event and thought it was really dumb and pointless. So, yeah, good on him.
It was dumb and pointless in so many ways because I'm just shocked that it has much time. And, like, if you're going to change the plot that many times, and we ran through them already, you couldn't use one of them to tie up any loose threads from the fucking series that just got canceled. You know? Not a single one. Like whatever happened to like the the deviants being the special ones or being potentially the antibodies that they're talking about the entire time. Why didn't that come into play at all? You think that might have been something interesting or cool? Maybe like the other Celestials find out the new Celestial, they created their own Celestial, come here and they realize, hey, look, the deviants are matured, and they make like some sort of barter or something like that. And maybe that, whatever, something like that, something Something that
anything,
nothing
anything.
paid off. Nothing paid off.
You know what, I will say this though, right? Because this is one thing modern Marvel has trained me for. If I am somebody who is I'm a random ass person and I go into the comic book shop and I just read acts 1 through 5. Again, I don't have no attachment to the ongoings or nothing. I think this is a very cool story. Again, I am a random person. I don't have zero attachment. For me, this is fine. It's popcorn. You think it's gonna mean anything, but again, you're somebody random. This doesn't matter to you in the long run. I think this is a very good popcorn story. Like, I will give Axe that. And honestly, I'll give a lot of the Marvel events that's very popcorny. I think it does well for the casual. But when it comes to people who, like us, who've been following X-Men, who've been following Returnals, who've been following, Avengers, shame on all of us. Then that's when you see the cracks. But I think we've gotten to a point where Marvel in general has just gotten to a point where it's just like they are kind of just catering to the casual, the people that are just going to come in and they're going to come out. But the rest of us, fuck us all. Fuck us all.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, would a casual, reader like this? It's again, even disregarding I know about what happened in the previous run. It stresses itself out, and then it notes that it's stressing itself out, like in an ironic kind of way. I don't know, sure if a new reader would be entertained by it.
I think so.
Punishes you.
Well, how long is? Well, how many issues was the main one?
6 issues.
Oh, I think that's
6 issues, but as I mentioned, the complete of the Warfwild tie-ins was like 500 pages.
Yeah, I'm talking stripped down the 6 issues.
Oh, so if we're on stripped down, then the main Judgment Day mini 5 issues is incoherent. It's incoherent. It's like it's a jumble nonsense. Like, because it'll be one thing and it's like, okay, well, I guess you saw that that it said it judged us negatively because that happened in one of the tie-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Like this.
No, I don't know.
Whatever. It's over now. The night is over.
Yeah, this is one of those events that's probably going to end up like one of those things that people bring up and then people are like, oh, wait, yeah, that existed, man. Like, it's going to be probably pretty forgettable, I think, in the long run.
Because, my bad.
I mean, like, as Elvis said, this is already forgettable at the end of the story. Like, all the characters basically forget it happened. So, I don't know. I think the readers are also probably not going to pay much attention to it.
Yeah, like, it doesn't have much reread value.
Yeah, but that's true of all events, really. Like, you can only read.
I read for every year, man. It's tight.
I love you, Elvis. I love you, bro. Yes.
Evergreen. That's a modern masterpiece.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Hey, listen, DC, we need that for every evil omnibus, bro.
How have they not made it yet?
Like, how you let Elvis beat you to the punch?
I know, I made my own digital copy. Yeah.
So the question that I am unable to answer is this the worst Krakoa event? Because there have been some really bad Krakoa events. X of Swords is very bad, but is it worse than this?
Yeah, I think they're equally worse because they're both equally. They'll equally feel like they're making fun of the reader for caring about shit.
But Elvis, I want to posit you that things happen in X of Swords. Like, things do not happen in this story.
That's true.
But X of Swords was such a, and don't get me wrong, Subversion's not all the way bad, right? It's not always bad. But you promised me sword fights with 10 fucking swords that these people have to go out and find.
Yeah, 10 magical swords.
And there's not a sword fight. Well, no. Betsy has one in the beginning, and that's when they kill her for like 3 issues or whatever. But other than that, like,
did Wolverine have one too?
He got a sword. He had a fight in an issue, not in X of Swords, but I don't think. I'm trying to remember the shit. Now y'all are gonna make me reread X of Swords.
Oh, I mean,
I think X of Swords was better than this.
yeah, I want to say so
I'll
as
say
well.
yes. I'll equally as bad. I'll say equally as bad.
No. This is the worst one.
This
is the worst one. Judgment Day is the worst one.
Yeah,
X of Swords is one of the reasons I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I'm not reading anything of the tie-ins ever.
X of Swords is like they gave Teeny Howard 3 tries in Krakoa to make that entire thing work, and I don't think any of those 3 series worked at all. I don't hate her or anything, but those series are just like, oh my god.
I think with X of Swords, I was more entertained. I feel like, yes, it was very bloated, but I remember there were specific parts in X of Sword that I enjoyed. X-Men Eternals, of X-Men Eternals Avengers, there was very little.
There's nothing.
Yeah,
there are no funny. Like usually, like you know me, I like to crop like stupid panels and post on my timeline and then shit post about them. That's like what I do. There was nothing in this series that was worth cropping. There was no funny panel. Like when Gillen tries to be funny,
there was
it just
funny
makes
panels.
me no. That's cringe. That's when he's being cringy. But like, Jesus Christ, fuck me.
Yeah, I'm gonna put X of Swords over this one. Was another one? Was another Krakoa event that happened?
Any of the Hellfire Balls, also all of them suck.
The Hellfire Galas, but those aren't really event comics because they're not really like. They're not
first
really.
One was
like,
almost kind of treated like one, and it was terrible.
You get Inferno, you get.
There was Inferno, but I mean, Inferno wasn't that bad. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't nowhere near this bad. Like no, God no.
Oh, one's this bad? No, I think it's just these two.
Are we? But we're not. But are we counting Inferno as an event though? Like we have to be fair here. Inferno was.
I mean, it was billed as one.
It was an event because they marketed it. So this is the big next, and it was a status quo change for Krakoa. So I think it actually does sort of count. But I mean, Inferno was nowhere near this as bad as this. Like Jesus, that's almost insulting to Hickman.
I'll even put Fall of X better than Eternals.
Oh my God!
I'm talking the one shot.
Now we're really getting into difficult territory here.
I'll never read post Hickman Krakoa, so I'll never know. I'll never know.
Well,
I'm gonna give the Fall of X like the Hellfire Gala that kicked it off. Oh, that, and I did read, what was the other one? The one that came out. Fuck. Is it Uncanny? No, it's not Uncanny. What? Shit, I can't remember.
Yeah, so somebody commented on this the other day, is that it's impossible to remember the Krakoa era team names because it's just. Wait, was this X-Men Red? Was this X-Men whatever?
No, it was Dark X-Men. Dark X-Men.
Oh, yeah, Jesus Christ! Fuck, there are so many X-Men titles.
Yeah.
And they all just blend together eventually, and you're like, wait, what was I reading? Was this Uncanny? Was this? But yeah, I don't know. At least Fall of the House of X, I've managed to crop some hilarious panels from, which is always a plus in my book. But it has not been good.
Oh God, but yeah. Oh God. I'm so happy we're done with this era. I'm done.
Yeah, and it's still going. There's like 2 more or 3 more issues to go before this fucking shitfest is over. We're gonna have to marry Mystique and Destiny. That's gonna be a special. That's important.
Wait, that hasn't happened yet? I thought that came out.
No. That's a bit. There's a wedding special that's coming out just before the relaunch. There's like the wedding special of Mystique and Destiny. That's the source of that. I cropped the panel of Captain Marvel from the cover where she just looks like she's totally fucking like horrified that she's there. Oh my God.
All right. So, any last thoughts? I am out. I am.
Yeah.
I want to forget it. I'm almost entirely forgot it. I forgot basically the entirety of the 12-issue run. I'll probably forget all of AXE by tonight.
Well, that's just Ajax at work, you know. Just wiping your memories back out so you can get another reboot, and we can do this again in a year.
Yeah.
Wait, Eternals are canceled?
Yeah, exactly. It's not still going. Oh my God.
Oh my God! But seriously, it does feel like everyone's memories were immediately washed to this. Because, like, again, I still see people who were like, "Oh man, this is a must read. This is a all this kind of shit, right?" And they never ever brought it up ever again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like about halfway through the run, I started not seeing people hyping it up anymore, and I was like, "Yeah, that kind of tracks really. Like, I can understand why."
All right,
Oh,
so
man.
let's see here. Let me see. So, just get you up.
I want to be generous and say that maybe this made Marvel realize that doing these big event synergy things was a bad idea, because as noted, they actually have not tried to make a synergy comic for a movie since this. I mean, they have certainly made comics that are sort of synergistic, but they haven't made anything that's been like hyper marketed this way again. So maybe they learned a lesson? Question mark? Like, I don't know.
Doubt it. I doubt it.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so I want to say thank you all for joining me. If you could, let's see here, Ro, say your goodbyes and plug your stuff.
Yeah, guys. Thank you for having me. By the way, somehow I made it here. But yeah, that's my channel, Rollable Queen _ yeah, I'm just talking shit about comic books and all that good stuff. I'll be back on my YouTube page very soon. I recorded like 2 or 3 videos, so I'll have those out. But yeah, I'm just happy to fucking be here, man. This is great talking to you guys, for real.
No, it really is. It's been too long.
Yeah.
How about you, Bullski?
Yep. So I'm Comrade Bullski on Twitter, and I also post articles on a site called Dimes and Daggers and a site called How to Love Comics. There are links to them in my Twitter profile. And I just write whatever I feel like, really. Probably not about the Eternals, I don't think.
Okay, and you, AJ?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the page that Elvis has on screen. I give hot takes on what's happening in comics. A little less than normal lately, but that might pick back up. Yeah, you can find me on Rose channel whenever we do a podcast, and yeah, that's about it.
Hey,
All right.
Bullski,
Yep.
I'm gonna just say, yo, bro, when Blood Hunt is done, I need you on the channel, brother. I need
No, my God, no!
Oh,
Don't
yes,
fucking make me
yes,
talk about Blood
yes,
Hunt again.
yes.
I don't want
No,
You
to
already
talk.
said already said you were reading it, so we gotta do it.
Yes,
we got
yes.
some blood.
I
No.
read the second issue of Blood Hunt. Nothing fucking happens in that issue. Like nothing happens in that issue.
I need, brother. I need you. I need
I
you.
can't believe that they started the first issue with 3 shocking deaths that are not going to be deaths, and then nothing happens in the second issue. This is going to be 5 issues. How can you waste an issue of a crossover? Like,
That's
Jesus.
why I need you. That's why I need you.
But I'm not going to read the tie-ins. I will not.
No, I'm
I'm not going to read the 50
After
fucking
this-
tie-ins that they're making.
After
Like,
this, I'll read the tie-ins.
no,
I'll
no,
read
don't
the
do
tie-ins.
it. You're going to die.
Well, someone needs to figure out if this story stays on track.
Actually, no, well, I am reading the Times because I am subscribed to Avengers, and I will be reading the Black Panther ones.
Yes,
So
I think that the ones that Jed McKay writes are gonna work and become a coherent story, because I don't think Jed McKay is that incompetent of a writer. Because I've already seen that the Doctor Strange issue tied in perfectly with the first issue of Blood Hunt and went into the second issue. So I think that one, Moon Knight, and Avengers are all gonna work together. It's all of the other bullshit that I'm worried about, like all of the ones that are written by other people that are like, here's Spider-Man in Blood Hunt, and like here's fucking X-Men in Blood Hunt, which they're also doing. Oh my God, they're doing a fucking Magic in Blood Hunt, like Magic Fights Vampires issue. I might have to read that.
This is why I need you. This is why I need you. This is why I need you.
Okay, I will do it. I will do it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let's end here. And yeah, thank you so much for anyone who joined, commented, listened in. This was a lot of fun. And see you again next time. Okay.
See ya.
Bye.